Hey guys, Metal Viking 82 here, back with a new Viking Orations. And as you can tell by the title of this video, I'm going to be doing a new CD review, and I'm going to be reviewing for you today Embludgeonment-Infinite Regress. Absolutely sick artwork there, done by the man, John Zig. I've really enjoyed a lot of his artwork. Oh god, disc is falling out. I really need to replace the case here. There's the CD, and I love the back of this disc. I just love how they did that. Always thought it was cool when bands did that. Or should I say labels. I guess, you know, maybe the band had a little input on it. But yeah, Embludgeonment. If you do not know who they are a four-piece brutal death metal band based out of Atco, New Jersey, who formed back in 2009. And this right here is their debut full-length album, put out in 2013 by Ungodly Ruin Productions. It is 8 tracks, clocking in just a little over 28 minutes in length. And it was actually recorded, mixed, and mastered by Ron Vento of Aurora Borealis at his Night Sky recording studio. So when I read that, I thought, oh shit, the production is going to be really good on this, because Ron puts out some amazing work. He pretty much records all of the Aurora Borealis material, obviously, because it's his band. And anything I've ever heard him do has always been top-notch production-wise. The band, though, consists of 4 guys, as I said. You have Ken England on vocals, Mike Mayo on guitar. At least on this album, he is currently no longer in the band. Lee Cousins on guitar, and Mark Green on drums. And if you're wondering why I'm looking down, I've got my notes right here, because I'm really going to remember all that just off the top of my head. But all of these guys are actually current and former members of bands such as Waking the Cadaver, Insanity, Aurora Borealis, Pyrexia, Mortal Decay, and the list just goes on. So you got some pretty top-notch bands right there that these guys are a part of. And I think that also has a lot to do with why this album sounds the way it does. What can you expect when you listen to this? You know, as I said, these guys play brutal death metal. And a lot of times when you hear brutal death metal, you think, you know, just ultra guttural, indecipherable vocals, constant blast beats played at inhuman speeds, and things like that. But these guys have a more old school approach to brutal death metal. Think like Suffocation, Internal Bleeding, Pyrexia, things like that. And I think, like as I said, the fact that these guys were a part of bands like Pyrexia and Mortal Decay and things like that, that is why they kind of have that old school mentality towards brutal death metal. And really, as soon as you hit play, there's no real let up with this. There's no interludes. There's no like slow passages. There's no instrumentals. None of that. It's just straight ahead, you know, kick you in the teeth, brutal death metal for 28 minutes. There are a couple songs that the riffs they hold some riffs and they kind of fade out a little bit. And then it goes into the next song. But other than that, there's just real no let up from the get-go. Breaking it down, the guitars, there's some really awesome riffs on this album, and in fact there's actually some Death the Band isms in the riffs. There was a few riffs I thought, man, that could have been a Death riff right there. And yeah, solo wise, you have guitar solos spread throughout, but I don't really recall when the several times I've listened to this there being a whole lot of guitar solos. But once they did have guitar solos, they were done freaking amazingly, in my opinion. And Lee Cousins actually did most of the guitar solos on this album, except for the first one in the closing track Binary and Interstitiality, which was done by Mike Mayo, and then Lee took over and did the second solo in that one. And one solo that really kind of stood out to me, though, was in track 6, which was called Dead End's Own. Towards the very end, it has this kind of twin harmonics, dual guitar solo type thing going on. It's very brief. It doesn't last very long, but as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, fuck, that was awesome. But yeah, really good performance by these guys. Bass, which was actually handled by both Lee and Mike. There really is no bass player in this band. In fact, the current lineup does not include a bass player, so I'm assuming Lee takes over bass duties on their newest album. But as far as the bass goes, it's not real super audible in the mix. You know, like I said in my last review, I love when bands have, especially death metal bands, have bass high up in the mix. Not too high, but just kind of really audible. Think like, you know, as I said before, Alex Webster, things like that. I really always enjoy that. But even though you can't really hear the bass very audibly. You know, when you do get to hear it, you can tell they're laying down a really solid backbone to any song that it is on. Mark Green on drums. I thought he turned in a really solid performance on this album. He does a lot of good drum fills and rolls, a lot of good blasting. His double bass work is impeccable. And in fact, the production on the drums I thought was amazing. It was nice and thick, especially the bass drums. And you know, a lot of brutal death metal, you know, they get the snare drums sound like they're hitting a tin can, or the, you know, the kick drums sound like they're fucking typewriters, and, you know, I mean, come on, Ageless Venomous, anybody? But, yeah, they did a really good job, as I said, on the production for the drums for this. And Mark turned in a really solid performance, I think. Lastly, we have Ken and his vocal performance. And again, when it comes to brutal death metal, a lot of times guys tend to do a more one-dimensional approach, just, you know, ultra guttural, just constantly the same tone, maybe a few screams here and there, but mostly it's the same tone. But I think he turned in a really solid performance. He really varied it up a lot. He has these really good screams that he does. He does a lot of mostly, you know, death, what I call death yells and roars, and does some mid-range growling, but he also goes ultra guttural and deep sometimes that are coming really close to Anti from Demolic material. I mean, that kind of level is what I'm talking about. I mean, and as soon as I hear that, I'm just like, oh, because I love Demolic. I love Anti's vocals. I always love it when he's like guest spots on something. So to hear Ken kind of get almost as close as he does in the gutters, I thought was really awesome. And the other cool thing he does is sometimes he kind of layers his vocals, so you might have a nice guttural going on, but you'll hear him doing a screaming backing vocal and stuff like that. So I thought that was a really good touch. Overall, really solid album. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Definitely check these guys out if you're into brutal death metal. I really enjoy this. I've probably spun this about 6 times since I got it, and I haven't even had it that long. And they actually have a new album out due next month through Comatose Music, who they're currently signed to, called Barn Burner. So definitely be on the lookout for that. I know I'm excited for it. So yep, that is going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing. And until next time, stay brutal.